Okay. Well, let's begin. I'm going to start out here with just the introduction. Last fall, we created a new publication over at Sonoma State called The Wine Industry Today, and it featured our board members and our faculty. Jay Johnson at RNDC, he penned a piece called The Distribution Landscape, the Ever-Changing Route to Consumer, and how challenging it is. And George Christie read that piece, and he said, Ray, I think we'd like to do a panel on this at the sales symposium. And so that's how this came together. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So, with that, let's begin. Rachel, if you could introduce yourself and take a few minutes to look back, reflect on what 3-tier has been like for you and your organization over this past year.
Sure. My name is Rachel Collier, and I've been 30 years in the industry. I spent the first 23 years in distribution in California. About 16 of those, I was VP of chains for the state. And then I went on for 7 years to work in national sales for a small family-owned winery called Ancient Peaks in Paso Robles. And this year I've just joined Distinguished Vineyard, which is a supplier portfolio that owns 5 wineries in California, Oregon, and New Zealand. And I would say, the last year for us, we changed distributors last year to RNDC and aligned nationally. So that's been really exciting for us. A lot of new people to meet, a lot of really great people, just a lot of moving parts. And I think the one thing that I see is that there is a move. I think they mentioned it at the keynote. There's this shift that I see in myself and in the distributor as acknowledging like it is a challenging time in the industry, but there are things that are working. So it's not just a full stop at it's challenging. There are things that are working. We have brands that are growing double digit. So I think they're starting to focus on that, and I think that is the shift in this last year.
Thanks, Rachel. Dan, how about you?
Yes, my name is Dan Hoban. About 20 years in the business, came from the supplier side, worked for 10 years at Young's Market RNDC, running their wine division for California, along with my partner Nick here. And then was at, most recently, St. Michel Wine Estates, running the West Coast for them, until they've had some shifts and some changes, as you are all familiar. But the wholesale network is quite dynamic. It's ever-changing. I think we've seen more consolidation, more challenges across, especially in California, as this is the biggest piece of the apple, but across the whole country. I think we're going to continue to see some disruption. I think with Breakthrough coming in, they'll be fighting for market share. They'll be fighting for the consumer dollar and the retail mindset. But I still think that there is an opportunity for some smaller wholesalers to come in and present themselves in a different way and deliver differently on behalf of smaller wineries, smaller distilleries that need that voice of authenticity in the storytelling, which I think as we get to become a bigger wholesaler and as your brands mature, you have to work harder at that storytelling and be authentic. And I'm excited about what's going to happen over the next 3 or 4 years. I think that the next generation is starting to become a mature drinking age in their 30s, and I'm thinking of my nieces and nephews that are now on their second job. They're making some decent money. They own a home. They're having kids. And wine is becoming part of their day-to-day routine. It's becoming part of their lifestyle. When I was 22, I was not drinking wine. I was drinking beer. I was drinking cocktails. Now, as I matured, and I even came up in the restaurant business, but I think that that's an opportunity that's going to come. And as this generation is older, and it's a big generation, my generation was small. It was sandwiched between the boomers and what's coming up right now. So I think there's nothing but optimism in the wine business. We just need to find them, and we need to engage with them, and we need to get them to come to our community of wine and show up differently a little bit than how we traditionally have.
You, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Hi, everyone. My name is Heather McCarthy. I'm Director of Marketing for Rombauer Vineyards. I've been in the industry working in PR and marketing my entire career. I'm in my 7th year with Rombauer, and as many of you know, Rombauer was acquired by the Gallo family of brands late last year. And so I think kind of the focus to really stay the course in 3-tier is more important to us now more than ever. As a brand, we are incredibly fortunate to have such a loyal following. We consider ourselves an attainable luxury. We offer consistent style and quality that has ultimately delivered success for the brand across all channels. So excited to talk with you all today about 3-tier and DTC and just kind of how to take a holistic approach, I think, for your business with distribution and sales.
Great. And Nick?
Hi, I'm Nick Clateman. I've been currently the Vice President of Sales with the Estates Group with RNDC. I have about 28 years in the industry, split evenly between Southern Wine and Spirits, and now with the Young's Market, now RNDC of the Estates Group. Estates Group specializes, while we have larger wines like the Treasury portfolio, Distinguished Vineyards portfolio, we really also specialize in small boutique wineries and, estate-grown, family-owned wineries, and that's kind of our specialty. Being in the industry 28 years, starting in the grocery chains, moving into on-premise, off-premise, and being in this position for the last 14 years, I've really seen a lot of change. One of the questions that was in the last session was about AI and how that is affecting. It is definitely affecting the industry and how people buy, how people think, how they research. They have more tools and power at their fingertips now than they ever have before. But at the core, it's a people business. And, there's a very special thing in each of these boxes that we bring from point A to point B. And we really got to go into and bring in the life and the history and the family that's behind those. And that's what I think can get missed. And as we it's important to be connected and be involved with the AI and the computers and information. That is very important. However, we need to remember at the core that it is a people business, and these are stories and families and history that is in there, and that's what we need to remember, and that's something we strive for every day to bring forward.
We broke up the subject matter into, if you will, chapters in a book, and the first one is, where do you start? If somebody in the audience is saying, I want to get successful in 3-tier, where do I start? And Heather's going to kick it off.
Yeah, great. I think I so related to so much of what Ben was saying in the last presentation about the consumer engagement, because for Rombauer, it's always the consumer first. They drive every decision that we make as a brand. We consider ourselves to be a really high-touch organization, so we believe and we invest in that one-to-one engagement with our customers across the country. An example of kind of the high touch, and this is more or less through the lens of events, but just to give you an idea of how we invest our time in the market, Rombauer hosts over 50 events a year. Those are divided up between what we do in the tasting rooms and wineries, along with our regional marketing association partners, so Cinema Vintners, Napa Valley Vintners, SLH Wine Artisans now. We have an initiative called Rombauer on the Road, where we are doing a number of different events throughout the year with our wine club members. We're taking 250 of them at a time on wine club cruises around the Mediterranean. We're hosting in-home tastings with them. We're also participating in all of not all, but most of the national trade events. So Charleston Wine and Food and Pebble Beach and Aspen, Santa Fe Wine and Chili Fiesta. And we're there because our customers are there. So we really always want to show up to where our customers are going to be. And then it's also a great acquisition tool for us. So how do we engage new audiences when we're in market? I think something else that we do that I'm really proud of is that we make sure that regardless of the channel, the visuals, the messaging, it is all aligned. And so our customers are engaging with us and they're seeing this seamless and authentic communication from the brand. And it's delivering that consistency of message, and that's something that they've really come to expect over the last 40 years of business. So when we think about the actual wine sale, we really consider ourselves to be more or less channel agnostic. We want to be easy to do business with, and we want them to purchase us where it's most convenient for them, whether that's DTC, club, in their local retailer, whatever is going to work for them. That's where we want to show up and be for the customer. And I think in the future, 3-tier and DTC are going to be equally very important channels for the brand.
And Rachel, how about you? What do you recommend?
Well, I think, when you start working with a distributor, the most important thing is that you approach it as a partnership, because they are an extension of your brand. They are the ones that are going to be in the accounts every day representing your wines. And it's a partnership. If you may sometimes go out and get the business for them, they may go out and get the business for you. And you're really just trying to figure out, I guess for me, having a distribution background, it's been really helpful because I know what the pain points are. I know how stressful it is. There are a lot of competing, goals in the company, and you have to really, it's about getting attention and bringing things that are valuable to your distributor. So for me, it's about understanding how they operate and thinking about what are the tools that they need to sell your wine. Is it Nielsen data? Is it scores? Do they need, display material? But you really have to make the case and make it very simple, simple message for your distributor to hit the market and be most successful with your wines, because they have a lot going on and you need to be easy. And if you're easy and fast and you give them a reason to sell your wine, they're going to run with it because they want to grow. They have to grow. We all want to grow. And I think that's the message, is just being a partner and really putting yourself in their shoes and thinking about how I can best package my message so they can receive it and give it to their customer.
Well said. Now, sometimes the news that we read is bleak. There's been a lot of bleak news, right? And Ben referenced some of that. Yet during our advance meetings preparing for today, you said they have to look beyond the news, not to ignore it, but rather to focus on what you could control. So let's talk about that and lead off with Nick.
Yeah, I think, if you open up the paper, it tells you not to drink. Drinking is bad for you. It tells you all of the reasons why you shouldn't do something you enjoy. And our consumers are drinking differently now. It is a fact of the matter. They drink in a different way. My coming up was about consumption and quantity. Now it's more about quality. And people they'll come into a nice restaurant, they'll spend a lot of money for a food pairing at a restaurant, but they'll have a glass of wine. But they'll spend a lot for that glass of wine, So they're consuming differently. So we need to understand that when we're going in. It's not, as Dan said, it's not all bleak and people aren't drinking anymore and they're walking away from it. They're just drinking differently. And so I think we need to engage the consumer differently. I had a recent conversation with an iconic winery who is, a higher price point and couldn't understand why their wines weren't everywhere they went, to restaurants, to stores, and just didn't understand. And I explained, well, I know who you are. Maybe you've had movies made about you, stories written about you, a lot of lore about you. The next generation doesn't, and you have to be engaged, and you can never stop being engaged with the consumer, with your distributor. Rachel said it best: partnership. You have to be engaged with your distributor. You have to keep it simple. Most distributors have very short attention spans because they're getting hit from all different levels at any given day, at any given moment. So the more direct and simple you can make your messaging, the more engaged you are with them, the better it's going to be. And they can then take that out into the consumers, into the retailers, into the restaurants, and have better success with your brands.
And to build on what Nick said, so we need to be engaged, we need to be connected with them. But Dan, you talked about how you have to be efficient. Talk about that.
Yeah, you have to be efficient if you're working with a wholesaler. One, you have to be really present. You can't, Nick and I used to use this term, you can't drop your kids off at school and expect them to be educated if you're not checking in on them. And 10 years ago, 15 years ago, wholesalers were thirsty. Wholesalers needed items to sell, so you could do that. Now, wholesalers don't need anything. There's very few things that a significant wholesaler needs any more of. There's a couple trends, there's a couple regional things, but there's very few things that they really need. They're looking for things that can elevate them to the new level, open up new doors for them, and you have to be present to do that. So if you represent your brand, be present, be simple to understand that elevator pitch for your brand. You got to train sales reps and managers to be able to say that just like you say it, because that's what they get. They get 20 seconds to start to get a hook into a wine buyer. We don't call them sommeliers anymore, but a wine buyer, or Terry at Safeway or Anthony at Rayleigh's. You get 20 seconds to get them going, and if they're not hooked, you're going to lose them. So you have to be present, keep it simple, and give them a different point of view that they're probably not expecting to hear, because it has to be different and it has to be unique. Chardonnay is Chardonnay. Why is your Chardonnay? Why do I need to engage with it? And that's what I think. And then figuring out different avenues, and we talked about this before. There's a lot of different wholesalers out there. There's a lot of different wineries that are different sizes. We saw it today. We have wineries in here representing 100,000 cases down to 1,000 cases. Find your wholesaler that fits you, that can be your partner. Even if it's LibDib, which is a virtual wholesaler that just does it all online, there's ways to engage with that to get your product to consumers in a different way. Think untraditionally, Serendipity Wine, Maverick. There's smaller wholesalers that can partner with your brands, and you can be relevant with them. Don't think that the biggest wholesalers are your path to, are the golden road. Eventually, hopefully, all of us get there and need those bigger wholesalers to merchandise 3K stacks of Markham and make sure we're in every Ruth Chris with Rombauer. But as we're growing the brands, partner with somebody that takes passion in what you're doing and can elevate that and can communicate that story, because big wholesalers have a lot to do, and that storytelling has to really be impactful and really mean something and resonate with them in order to get them to do that.
And Rachel, what about looking at each account and being granular?
Yeah, so I think what we need to do is understand our brand, understand our competition, and understand the market as a supplier. And we have to bring to the distributor what those items are that will fit that particular customer and how we are going to promote those wines. So you may have one account that likes for you to do wine dinners with the winemaker. You may have another account that's into demos and tasting or staff training or whatever it is. But make sure that you understand who are you targeting and what it is that they need for that account. And then you're bringing that to the distributor. You're adding value by setting those events up or whatever it is. Maybe it's display material or Nielsen data.
And how about you, Heather?
Yeah, and I love what you two are bringing to the table, because you're giving like real life advice of how to attack that regardless of the size of winery. And then for me, from a marketing standpoint, I'm sharing more of the Rombauer experience in hopes that maybe there's bits of information that you can grab onto and apply to your own business. But I think distributors have so many brands and so many SKUs to manage these days. So for us, for Rombauer, we really focus on creating that consumer demand. So it's almost like they're incentivized to give us a little fair share of their time, because they know that a placement of Rombauer is going to result in a sale. I think something that we do as a company that is unique for Rombauer specifically is that we have so many representatives out in market every day. And what I mean by that is Rombauer has 4 winemakers, and they travel probably 30 days each a year. We also have our whole brand team. We have our leadership team. We are all out in market collectively. I think we counted up 300 days we'll be in market this year. That's direct support that we're giving to our distributor partners and our sales organization. And I'll give you an example of how we spend our time in market. And I think what's so important too is really, when you are traveling on behalf of your business, leverage your time. Get out and think about every channel that you can impact. For Rombauer, something that we kicked off a few years back are called Rombauer Blue Parties. And so there's a theme to my blazer today. I'm always dressed for the brand. So these are wonderful brand building activities, and they're in line with our bigger initiative to truly own Rombauer's iconic blue capsule. So you'll see Rombauer Blue across all of our point of sale, everything you digitally engage with our brand on, and then at all of our events. So Blue Parties are wonderful brand activations. We go into market, we invite it's predominantly a consumer event, to come and dress in their whatever shade of blue they like, or white. We invite media partners and trade. And these are great ways to build the brand. We have food, wine, music, and just an evening with Rombauer. And we use these as a couple of different objectives for the events. One is to take, again, Rombauer on the road, again, that high-touch, one-to-one engagement with customers. Excuse me. and we go to developed markets. And then the other objective is that we go to underdeveloped markets and we introduce the brand to bring new audiences in. So in March, we were in Scottsdale, Arizona. We sold that event out in 10 days. It was 150 wine consumers. We had trade media. It was a great night. We will be in Boston in 2 weeks, and then we'll be in Atlanta in September. Boston and Atlanta for us are underdeveloped markets, and they're opportunity areas to really continue promoting the brand, educating our distributor partners, engaging with consumers. But while we're there, we're not just hosting our event. So we're taking 3 or 4 days in market. We are working with our distributor partners. We're going out into, on-premise. We'll do an on-premise work with. So we're showing our wines and we're telling our stories, and we're making sure to focus on that, very succinct pitch for the brand and for the products and why they would want to put it on their list. We're also calling our wine club members, and if we have a free night, we're inviting them out to dinner. And that's something really rare. I don't see a lot of other brands doing that, but it makes a difference, and it creates that lifetime loyalty with our customers. On top of that, we're also hosting wine dinners. So it's really how can we make the most time out of our visit into market? And we
Heather?
consider these all kind of market takeovers for the brand. Yeah.
Market takeovers. And Heather, could I give you a question from the audience?
Oh, please.
This came up. Do you self-distribute in California or perhaps Washington?
Great question. Yes. In the state of California, we are broker direct. So we have 3 different brokers in the state. And that was actually one thing with the Gallo acquisition that was very unique for Gallo, is that they have kept our distribution model in California intact. So whereas nationally we switched a number of locations to go into Gallo distributor network, in California we have maintained our sales organization in California and then our broker network.
Great. And then let me give this to anyone from the panel if you'd like to take it. Does wholesale make sense for boutique wineries with retail price points from $70 to $150 a bottle?
I'll take that. Yes, they do, but you have to understand, and this is something I wanted to touch on what Dan was saying, there's all different sizes of distribution and wholesale. And it's what people don't realize a lot of times, and they get frustrated with, is it's expensive. When you engage with a distributor, there's an expense that goes into it, whether it's with incentives, whether it's with billbacks and support. A lot of what's built there has a cost value to it. So it doesn't always necessarily make sense to get into the biggest distributors, whether it's Southern or Winebow or RNDC, because you may not have the expense to be able to do that. So there's other channels that you can get into. But those price points do have value, but they are more niche and take a little bit more time and take a little bit more romance and hand-holding at that price point to get in, especially right now as people are kind of destocking, as they're minimizing their wine list, as those positions are kind of less than it was maybe 6-7 years ago. You've got to get in and do the pick and shovel work and really engage at that level.
While you have the floor, could you talk about using sales incentives and your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sales incentives, everyone always thinks it's a dollar amount. And we have a lot of them that right now that are dollar amounts. And to me, they're insane dollar amounts. I'm looking at these going, I want to go back to being a salesperson. I would kill it. And and I look at them and then I see the results at the end of it and I'm just scratching my head. It's like, how did they not get this? Sometimes it was that it was too convoluted. There were too many hoops they had to jump through to get it. Someone said, keep it simple. If you keep it simple and they can understand it from floor 1 to floor 2 and they can walk out clearly understanding the message, you're going to be successful. Also, if you make it more personal. We've done one with a winery where they went to the winery, they visited the winery, they got engaged with the winemaking team, and that winery created ambassadors. And they made it a personal thing that at the end of each quarter, one of those 5 people were going to have a row in the vineyards named after them. And at the end of the year, they were going to bring these people up and they were going to have a dinner. They were going to have pictures with their rows. They were going to later get bottles from those rows. And it created a personal connection. And I see people striving for that more than just a $50 or $100 placement, to get something done, is make it personal and make a connection with the winery.
And Dan, you were talking about other tools that people can use.
Yeah, I think just to dovetail on Nick's thing with incentives, one of the things that I tried to do at St. Michel and in my prior life working with Nick is try to make the experience memorable. Money's needed and it's important, but but experiences are memorable, and you make ambassadors, like Nick said. One of the things we were doing with our, we were just initiating with our Oregon properties at St. Michel with A to Z, Rex Hill, and ERATH, is if you, tied to a cash incentive, we pulled down the cash incentive half. Like if we were giving $100, we made it $75. We took $25 and we put it into, we were mailing them directly 3 bottles of wine for 3 months. And they were part of our mini wholesale wine club. And we were giving them wines that they didn't necessarily see wholesale-wise. They were getting them direct. They were our direct-to-consumer wines. And guess what they do with those wines? They take them to dinner parties. They put them on their dinner table when all of you come over for barbecue or for pizza night. And then you start talking about it, and you're kind of marketing by educating at the same time. And don't think that just you have to spend dollars. Think creatively about what that experience looks like and how they take that experience tomorrow and beyond that. And then using other tools. We talked about using syndicated data is important if you know the channel you're addressing. If you're talking to the on-premise, being the #1 IRR item is probably not that attractive. They don't care as much. They don't want the grocery store IRR item. They want the individual unique place. They want to know, where's this been successful? How is it turning? Hey, I have 22 placements of this across Northern California, and it turns about 3 cases a week at these on-premise accounts when it's priced right. And I think that's successful, and there's plenty of opportunity out there for those tools.
And Rachel, you taught me about digital coupons and things like that, other tactics.
Yeah, so I think what's really interesting over the last several years is all of these different ways to market your wine, right? So you've got digital couponing, you've got, we do a lot of advertising on Instacart, social media advertising to bring people into events. And it's been an interesting process to kind of test some of these things. And I would encourage everyone to try some of these new innovations. Some of them work, some of them don't. I like to use it sort of as a toolbox. So if we get a placement, and we were talking about this earlier, when you get a placement in an account, that's not the end. That is the first step. So you have to figure out what in your toolbox you can use to make sure you're supporting that placement. Maybe it's point of sale, it's digital, you try out a digital coupon if you're at a large retailer, you do some Instacart programming, this is really geared towards larger retailers, or you create social media events and with that particular retailer. So I think that thinking about how you pull those things through, trying some new things. We're doing some work with a demo company right now, and I really like what they're doing. So they purchase the wines, they'll leave reviews, they'll taste the wines, and then they will also promote on social media at that store that they're pouring the wine to bring people in, and they'll give them a coupon. I mean, it's just really kind of this holistic way of keeping everyone in the loop and supporting our brand. Then we go back and take that information to the retailer and say, this is how we supported this program. And that's incredibly important, is making sure that not only do you try these new things, new tools, but then you go back and let the buyer or the customer know this is what you did and these were the results.
I love what you just said about demos, and because that's the workaround. We are not allowed to post when we're at accounts because of Tide House and providing value to a retailer. So that is so smart. I hadn't even thought about that. Thank you.
Wow. And Heather, while you have the floor, we talked about who's the quarterback, who's running the show here. So you have competing interests in every company. So who drives the bus in your organization?
Yeah, we're really fortunate to have a wonderful team, across all departments. Our leadership team is in constant communication, so that's across DTC, 3-tier, international, production, every side of the business. For the actual consumer messaging and touch points, marketing has the final say. And at Rombauer with marketing, we oversee DTC, the wholesale, international, and then also all of our public relations efforts. But I think, we always have buy-in, and that is key. So for example, yesterday I conducted a 5-hour-long strategy planning meeting with DTC and marketing for 2025, just trying to get ahead of everything for next year. And it was wonderful, and it was collaborative, and there was so many ideas shared. And so I think that the takeaway there is that, work with everyone in the business and understand all corners and goals and objectives, and how you can all work together to support each other.
And Rachel, how are you managing the quarterback issue?
I think as a supplier, we are always going to be the constant for our brand. So we have to understand the market and know where we want to target our items. So in that sense, we may be leading the charge on some accounts, but when you work with a distributor, they may also be the quarterback for some accounts. So, Nick may know a buyer really well, and he brings that business to me and says, look, we're putting together this program. I want you involved. Here's what we're doing. And so he's the quarterback in that situation. I may know a buyer in one account in Southern California and say, look, I'm setting up a lunch. I'll bring the distributor in. Let's get an event going, whatever it is. And then for that situation, I'll be the quarterback for that account. And this is just in a distributor-supplier relationship. And then internally, with our company, we actually have really interesting project groups that we work across different departments with marketing, with DTC, where we have breakthrough initiatives for the year. So it kind of works on top of our goals, where we want to, do something specific. Like we have an item that that's very important that we sell this particular item at Safeway, one of our brands called Wither Hills, New Zealand brand. And so we'll have a group from marketing, from the winery, me, and then maybe someone from RNDC. And we'll all make plans together, like how do we make this particular item work? And it's very specific. And it works kind of on another layer beyond our goals.
And Nick, let's follow more on this path of how we're coordinating between the silos, DTC and wholesale.
Yeah, I think it's really important. So often, we do great work. We get the wines into restaurants, into retail shops, and then they want to go up and visit the winery, or they're considering the wine and they want to go up and visit the winery. And oftentimes what I found, and I worked for a short time for a winery, and I would send people up, and the DTC group was disconnected from sales. They were almost resentful of the sales because they were trying to sell that person in that moment, and they looked at it like, well, I'm taking my time away from making my commission and my sales for the day, and I'm not going to sell them anything, and I've just lost an hour or two. And it ended up being I would go up and I wouldn't trust them, and I would go up and take them around because I couldn't trust them. So training your DTC staff that these are very important customers. They may not buy anything in the moment, but they can cause a bad experience, which I had recently with somebody, that they have to go back and now do damage control, and you can potentially you may lose that 1 case sale from that day, but you just lost hundreds of cases when they go back to their account, and it's forever. It's ingrained in them. And it's not just their account. They tell their friends, and they share that negative experience. So I think it's really important to have the two sides combined. Have your DTC, have your tasting room equally excited to have that consumer or that customer up that's trade as they are that consumer that's walking in the door.
Wow. I like what you said. You don't want to have to do damage control. I mean, my God. And Rachel, how about you, the winery experience?
I would say, personalizing that visit, and Nick is absolutely right with, if they have a bad experience at the winery, then you're in trouble. So you have to really make sure that they understand. For me, I always, go out, to make sure they know exactly who this is, who's coming, who they are, what they expect, what we should be doing for them, and personalizing that visit. So if they may be someone that is really geeky about soils, so maybe we'll take them out and see a soil pit, and leave them with some of the rocks from the vineyard. Taking someone out to the wilderness and seeing what's happening on the vineyard. Those kind of things are important, and as much as we can get those personalized, but I will go back to what Nick said. It really has to be completely buttoned up. I mean, we have to treat every VIP visit or every visit from customers as highly, as we can, because this is our impression. That's their impression. We can do all the work in the field, and it can be ruined by one winery visit.
Wow. Dan, please. Yeah.
I think we all know that no one's more entitled than the customer. And they often show up on your doorstep if you're a winery owner, and they have expectations. Making sure that feedback loop from the team on site makes it back to sales, whether it's in Chicago, somebody just popping in, happens to be in Napa, they got 2 hours to kill and they pop in and they're like, oh yeah, I'm the buyer at this restaurant in Chicago. Making sure your Chicago sales team knows who came in and just having that feedback loop. It's a quick email. At Patson Hall, we had a weekly email that came out to the entire company. It wasn't individually to the West Coast for Dan and Dan's team. It was the entire company. Here's who came in, here's what we tasted them on, and here's any notes. Quite often there weren't a lot of notes, but I knew I could follow up with my wholesaler, Nick, and say, hey, Nick, we just hosted, I don't know, Michael Mina. Let's go in and follow up on it. They liked the Chardonnay, or maybe they didn't like the Chardonnay. Maybe we didn't get any notes, but let them know that you recognize that they came to your winery and use that follow-up loop to close and possibly close a sale and have an ambassador there. So often that's missed. They come to the winery and you don't know about it, and it's a full sale that you have an opportunity to close.
I like what you say about you're really documenting experience, and then it's shareable. It's not just what lives in your own brain. It's really important. A couple people asked about other uses of leveraging data. Is there something we haven't covered on leveraging data that any of you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, data is king. The more data you can give us, the more we can utilize it and shape it to how we need to do it. I think somebody said, don't take your same data points to a restaurateur that you would use for a chain sales. You're going to get lost. Also, don't bring your dirt and soil to a chain buyer because they're not going to understand it. So you have to know your audience. But the more information we can have, the better we can service the brands. So often it's just here's some information and go with it, and we'll look at a tech sheet, and it's simple and it's poetic, but there's not much substance to it. And so often now people are grasping for information. So, your tech sheets, your information that you put online, the more information you can have, and this goes to whether you're a wine.com that's trying to get it or a small restaurateur, the more information there you can have. The more data you have for a distributor, hey, we sell Chardonnay in this local region really well. That helps us. We can go out there and we can take that and pinpoint that data and go in and try to penetrate because we know that it's working well. So I would say the more information you have and the more sources, and there's new sources popping up every day, it's amazing how much information we now have at our fingertips, but the more you can give us, the better we can service.
Yeah, please, Heather.
Yeah, and on the supplier side, well, a couple things. I totally appreciate what you said about on-premise versus off-premise. We have very specific sell sheets and guides and information. We do not share any IRI or Nielsen data in the on-premise channel, but we do certainly talk about accolades, reviews, and just key selling points there. Something unique about our packaging for all of our core wines that are distributed nationally, on the back label, we have a QR code. And so anyone can scan it, distributors, buyers, customers, and immediately get at their fingertips tasting notes, videos from the winemaker, recipes to pair with the wines. And so it's another way that we use technology to educate our consumers and then the greater distribution universe.
There's a question a couple people asked about owning your brand and owning your pricing power, keeping the pricing consistent between wholesale and DTC. There's so much transparency of price now, right, with what we have online, and people discover price. So how do you manage price, I guess, is the big question.
I can jump back in because I do this every day. We are constantly policing pricing for Rombauer. I think what is so interesting about our wine club is that the number one SKU sold through Rombauer Wine Club is our Carnero Chardonnay, which is our nationally distributed product. And so we are watching the market so closely. We lean really heavily on Wine Searcher, and our customers let us know every day if they see. I am not kidding. If they see, Whole Foods or Total Wine or someone has slipped just below, they alert us, and so it's a constant communication. And I'd love to hear your perspective on the distributor side of making sure we're having those communications and saying what's happening at this account. Can someone get in there and kind of understand? We don't want to be the loss leader. Please, help us out on pricing.
I think from a manufacturer standpoint, from a winery standpoint, when you partner with somebody, make your expectations very clear. Have a pricing strategy. Let them know what the pricing strategy is. I want to be $24.99 on discount TPR, I want to be at $19.99 for 4 months of the year. But very clearly, let them know where you are, where you want to be, and why you feel like this is your pricing strategy. You don't, and I think that's important. Have a pricing strategy that you can believe in and that you can repeat and try to maintain that. I think that you're always going to have the bad actors that drive Rombauer at, they flash it at $24.99 in order to drive traffic. But ultimately, you need to have a pricing philosophy that you believe in and that you can repeat, and you can let your wholesaler know, this is where I want to be today, this is where I want to be on price, this is where I want to be by the glass, and then be consistent with that. You can't get caught up in, I say this as I don't have a warehouse full of wine right now, but you can't get caught up in the fact that maybe your pricing philosophy is not working. It's hard. It's hard to be volatile with pricing if you're emotional with volume. So if you can try to build your plan of volume with your pricing, knowing what that category is doing, and as you build and as your brand has a lifestyle, a life cycle. Sorry, not a lifestyle, but a life cycle. So
Well said. Yeah, Rachel.
I'm
please.
just going to say one additional thing, which is to keep your pricing tight. I mean, don't have any, deep, weird deals out there, because that is your leverage when you're doing the whack-a-mole with Wine Searcher. Because that pricing's not out there. So you can, hold their feet to the fire and just say, you got to raise your price.
Nick, please. Yeah.
sorry, one more thing. I also think wholesalers are getting smarter. And I know that at Young's RNDC, we were doing this. I know Southern's doing this, but it used to be that you had 25 different prices in a price book, and then you had 25 unpublished prices. That's no longer. They're getting more compliant. They're getting more consistent because accounts are demanding it. I mean, Total Wine is expecting that they're going to get the best price because they're one of the biggest retailers. And if you can't prove that to them, guess where you're headed? You're headed to court with them. So transparency and pricing with the wholesaler, they're going to be compliant. So it's going to really tighten this up over the next couple years. I don't think there's going to be as much crazy pricing out there as you see, and as much volatility. And the wholesaler's unwilling to work on 15% margin anymore because they have so much overhead. It's expensive to run a wholesaler. So
Yeah. Wow.
that should help self-correct some of our challenges with pricing.
Yeah. And Nick.
Yeah, I think someone said it, consistency. There is so much transparency now. We have reduced our structures to about from 20 to 3 or 4. And it's pretty consistent, but what we need from our partners is consistency from them, because often what I get is, oh, well, this one account I like, and they're close to me, and I want to give them this deal, and we want to do it for them, or they're going to buy 200 cases, and they're not going to do it, and I've kind of completely shut that off now. It's consistent. I battle with winery owners and people because they want to do it just for this one account or just for this one person. And for our integrity, we have to keep consistency in the marketplace. Because if I allow one person and I tell the other person we don't do any price reduction, we just don't do that, and then they turn and they see it online and they can figure out the math, it's lost all my integrity. So I think as you go into the marketplace, it's hard because back in the old days there was hidden prices. You gave your friend over here at this restaurant a certain price, and you gave this retailer a certain price, but not to this person because maybe you didn't like them. That was happening. We've eliminated that a lot over the last couple years, and it's not, I won't say it's to nil, but we're striving to get it to that point.
And let's look at the year ahead. So let's go to Heather. What do you see in the year ahead, and what advice do you have for people?
I think in the year ahead, I would just say that we're going to continue engaging our loyal fan base to deliver the product that they know and love, while always introducing the brand to new audiences. Like I said, we're doing so much on the events front, digital, lots of different activities for the brand. So that's Rombauer specifically. I think a couple things for the group. Really think about working cross-functionally across your business, understanding all the different departments, and learning about your consumer through those channels. I think about the tasting room. You can conduct a focus group every day if you just spend a little time in your tasting room talking to customers. And then on the flip side of that, when you're thinking about your market activities, when you're out traveling, really leverage your time there and think about the whole picture of how can you impact your wholesale business and your DTC business. Not just going into market for one event and home, but go out, for a distributor work with and an event, and host a wine dinner, engage with your club members. So there's lots of ways just to make the most impact with your time.
And Nick, how about you?
I think, the wine industry is entrepreneurial at its core. When you think about where the wine industry started, it started from people that were just taking on their own, the farmers who then built it up. And in some cases, it's still that way. In other cases, we have huge corporate wineries and big names and things that just draw on their name alone. But as we head into the next year, it is going to be tough. It's going to be challenging. There's a lot of headwinds, but it's not all negative. And I think those people who have relied on their past successes and who relied on their names and just kind of sit back are going to suffer. Those people who get out and do the work and hustle and kind of push through, they're going to be successful. And I'm seeing that already, and it's a day-to-day, and it's changing monthly. It used to change every quarterly or every yearly. Now it's changing monthly, even daily. So I think that's the key that you need to realize is you got to get out there and do the work. You got to be engaged at all levels, as somebody said. You got to engage all the way at the core salesperson level of building that relationship with them, because they're your ambassadors out there, taking your vision, your baby that you've created, and taking them out. And you want them to feel good about it, not negative that they're getting heat because they're not selling enough. You want them to feel good about what they're representing. And those they feel good about, they're going to be more inclined to present it in the right way. They're going to be passionate about it. They're going to speak eloquently about it. They're going to feel genuine about it. Those wines that they're just getting beat on to hit a quota, hit a number, they're going to sell them, but they're going to sell them in a different style. So the more you can be engaged at all the different levels and build the personal relationships into the customer, that's where you're going to be more successful. But you've got to put in the work and time to do it. If you just sit back and rest on your name and your past successes and your scores, it's not going to translate, and you're going to fall behind.
Yeah, it's constant, yeah. And Rachel, how about you?
I would say for Distinguished Vineyards, for us, we have 6 or 7 SKUs that are growing double digit, and our focus is putting as much fuel to the fire to keep those growing. So we have one particular situation where we've taken a adjustment in price over the last year, and we know that winery is not going to grow, not right now, right? So it's going to be a year until that kind of settles down. And that's not our focus. Our focus is on the wineries and the items that are growing. So we are growing as a company, and our energy is put towards those wines that are growing. And I would just say, all of us, all of you here, everyone, no matter what our role is, the best advice I have is to enter any kind of situation with your distributor as a partnership and do the work. Just put your head down, learn the customer, get out and meet people, meet with the regional teams, meet with the DMs, meet with the merchandisers, meet with the VP, whatever it is, meet with the customers, and just get out and learn. The more you get out, the more you understand what's happening in the market. It's going to give you ideas. You're going to have ideas like, oh my gosh, Sauvignon Blanc is like selling everywhere I go. So we need to focus on what do we have in our portfolio that we can show to our salespeople that are going to hit these, these targets. So I think that's what it is. It's just, and it's a lot of what Nick said. It's getting out and just doing the work.
Yeah. And Dan, the last word to you. Yeah.
I think the future's bright. I think we're going through some headwinds. I think it's hard. Everyone's feeling it. But I think what is about to happen with this new generation of exploring wine drinkers, we need to find them. We need to hold on to them. I kind of reference when I was younger, growing up in Southern California, Trader Joe's was the place that my dad and his friends went, and they would buy a case of mixed wine, and they would come home and they would all try it, and then the next day they'd go back and buy cases of the ones they liked. That's the younger drinker right now. They're experimenting. They're trying that case of mixed wine, but they're only trying a few of them, and then they're buying a few bottles. So they're exploring. They're thinking about different varietals. They're not just thinking Chardonnay and Cabernet. They're thinking, all these alternative white varietals right now. So we need to find that new consumer. We need to hold on to them when we get them, and we need to show them why wine is important as a lifestyle, as part of everything that they do. Wine can be there, just like beer or RTDs or something else was there. Water, I guess, is what a lot of them drink now. But they're going to mature, and they're going to come, and they're going to be thirsty, and we need to be ready for them when they arrive.
Yes, they will be thirsty. I love it. So when we put the panel together today, I want to ask Heather, just advance the slide for me. We'll go to the first group that we called upon. We called our board of directors, and we looked at who would want to participate. And so Jay Johnson's at RNDC, and he was able to bring Nick to our panel. And then Rachel mentioned Distinguished, and Steve Myers runs Distinguished here in North America, and so he brought us Rachel. I would say introduced us, but we reintroduced after 30 years, right? Right.
That was my first buyer when I first started in 1993.
Oh,
He was
wow.
a buyer and I was a new rep, and he was one of the first people I met in the industry.
Wow, neat. No, that's great. And then the second group of people that we turned to were our alumni. And so Heather went through the program with us, and Dan went through as well. We find our alumni are the next generation of the wine industry's leaders. And how about just advance that one, and I want to show you, and then one more. That's a group of some of our alums who went through the program recently. You can read the alumni stories at wbi25.sonoma.edu. It's all great stuff, stories of success and people living their dreams and really enjoying what they do. Lastly, I want to mention on scholarships. We have so much money to give away every year, you just can't believe it. So if you have a colleague or a son or a daughter who's thinking about going to work on their MBA next year or the year after, there are funds available that will help to support that education. So this highlights some of the scholarships that we've had for first-generation students. On the next slide, you'll see we have some of our recent recipients. And we're also working on inclusive excellence, promoting opportunities for women to rise up through the ranks into the C-suite in the wine industry, and also people of color. And then the next one shows some recent recipients and a lot of winemakers who go through the wine MBA programs now. And it's really cool to see how they join the science with the business to become ever successful leaders. And then lastly, I just want to say thank you to our friends at Wynn, George and Tammy and Kim and Buffy and Stephanie and everyone else who I probably missed. They've really been a partner to us as long as since the organization was created, and I appreciate everything they do for us. So thanks everyone, and have a super day.